What's up? This is Brandon London, and you're listening to the Big Blue UK and Ireland podcast. You hear that? The Big Blue UK and Ireland podcast. Let's go, Giants.
Well, welcome back, Giants fans, to the latest edition of the Big Blue UK and Ireland podcast. This time we are 75% British, 25% Irish, but absolutely still 100% Giants. We're back from a week off. It's a full house as myself and producer Craig are back from our weekend at Download Festival. And as usual, we're alongside Shane and Kev to bring you the latest news surrounding the ongoing Barkley contract saga. Plus, we're going to be breaking down our wide receiver room as we take an in-depth look at who Daniel Jones is going to be targeting in 2023 in our main event coming up shortly. Guys, it's great to be back. How are we doing?
Yeah, they're all good. It's like I say, it's good to be back after the week off last week. If anyone's watching this and thinks at any point I look a little bit sleepy, tired, drugged up, hungover, any of the above or all of the above, just suffering with a little bit of hay fever, that time of year for me. But, you know, other than that, suffering hay fever, talking Giants football, what else can you ask for?
Yeah, good to have you back, lads. I know you were away this last weekend at Download Festival. Obviously, from the conversations, you had a fantastic time, which is good to hear. Love a good music festival myself. Yeah, just glad to be back talking football. I mean, obviously, things are starting to ramp down a little bit. We have had some OTAs. We've had some things to talk about, but you know, over the next few weeks, we're going to delve into all position groups, and I'm really looking forward to sort of seeing the state of the roster.
Yeah, we're literally just about to hit that kind of massive lull, aren't we, where mini camp ends and just nothing happens. I mean, we're going to get into it in a minute, but there is a big story that's kind of rumbling on that we, you know, could carry us through the next few weeks potentially. But yeah, we're all good, recovered. Big thank you to anybody who kind of interacted with us on Twitter. And I know Andrew Hamilton was one of the guys. Unfortunately, we didn't get to meet up with him, but he said he attended, and we did get to meet a listener while we were there, didn't we, Dan?
We absolutely did, yeah. His name was also Dan. So evening, Dan, if you're watching, how you doing, mate? Yeah, that was a good. It was quite. Again, it's still surreal, isn't it? You sort of meet someone that listens and follows, and you're like, oh wow, okay, cool, yeah. But no, it's good to meet him. It was a long, hot weekend, but what a better way of getting back and refreshing than to talk about our depth at wide receiver and to talk all things Giants, right? So that's exactly what's coming up for you guys shortly. I am sort of suffering a little bit still. I'm not as fully recovered as Craig is, so I do have a bit of a raspy voice and a bit of a chest infection going on. So if you do see me coughing and spluttering throughout, then my sincerest apologies. But I had a pretty good weekend rocking out at Donington. So yeah, that's my excuse. Anyway, before we get going though, I just wanted to make a little shout out to the Download crew, because why not? So producer Craig, Anna, Dean, Simon, Darren, Lucy, Greg, Sarah, Kira, Keris, Emma, Paul, and Oscar. You made my weekend one of the best weekends I've ever had. So thanks to you all. Really appreciate it. And now we move on. So starting off with the news from this week, and the Saquon Barkley contract saga just seems to rumble on, doesn't it? Unsurprisingly, the headlines have been all about him and concerning his contract issue as he ran his little football camp last week. He's yet to reach a long-term deal, obviously with the team, which has resulted in him being absent from mandatory minicamp, which started yesterday. More on that to follow in a minute. But he stated that he doesn't plan to sign his franchise tender anytime soon, which stops him from taking part in any of the team activities. And though he did express a little bit of frustration with some leaks coming from the Giants, which indicated that he sort of had some false narratives being created about him. And he was also a bit skeptical about deal being reached by the deadline in July, and hinted at the possibility of potentially extreme measures, such as sitting out the entire season. And he sort of mentioned that at the end of the day, it's all about respect. So, you know, it's not looking particularly rosy, but as revealed by Ian Rappaport earlier today, the Giants' previous offer that had been withdrawn is now apparently back on the table. The contract believed to be worth $40 million a year, is now back in play. So surely if you're Barkley and that deal's on the table, how quickly are you signing that based on the running back market at the moment?
I think it really depends on what how the deal's structured, so to speak. I mean, I've got to be honest. I think I listened to his interview that he had made. Was it yesterday or the day before? And he kind of, I thought he spoke quite professionally. Like he made it clear, maybe it's not as one-sided. The deal wasn't as you've heard, but he also didn't throw the Giants or anyone under the bus either, which, you know, you've seen a lot of people maybe in the past that haven't got the deal that they want to get, and they just throw the organisation or head coaches, owners, GMs, etc. Underneath the bus. And he didn't do that. So, you know, fair play to him for that. He's obviously frustrated, and you can understand why, because he said, you know, he does want to stay in New York, and I genuinely do believe that. But then it comes back to the conversation I think we had a couple of weeks ago when we was like, we spoke about it. He was like, is he going to sit out now? Again, I don't think he will, but if he chose to, I can't knock him for it. You've got to look after number one at the end of the day. But you know, if that deal's on the table, he didn't sign it last time. It's obviously structured in a way that they don't quite like. So I can probably understand why he's maybe not. But now hopefully what you might see is a little bit back and forth kind of thing, a bit like we did with Daniel's contract just before that got signed. And, you know, Barkley will go back and say, oh, Matt, can you structure it this way? Oh, well, what if we do it this way? And then in the end, within hopefully less than a month, the two parties have met each other.
Yeah, just to reiterate what Shane's saying, I think the offer obviously was made before the running back market looks so bad in this free agency. So obviously the running back market in this free agency hasn't helped sort of Saquon's case. So I kind of think that the Giants have come back with the offer they had on the table of around 14 mil per year, which I think is a fair offer. But I think the guaranteed money is the big factor. If the Giants get if Giants added a little bit more guaranteed money to this deal, I think Saquon should sign this pretty quickly, to be honest. Before, I was thinking this would drag out until July 17th with the franchise tag deadline. But now I think that the Giants have come back to the table, showing good faith. I mean, it's out there now, and Saquon's had his say in the matter. I think the sides aren't as far away as everyone believes. So I think we could see this signed pretty soon.
It's interesting that he kind of mentioned it. He kind of tiptoed around it at the same sense. I don't think there was any malice or any real conviction in him saying that he would sit out the season. But I think if you look back, Le'Veon Bell did it, didn't he? Yeah, if I remember correctly, he sat out and it didn't really work out for him. He didn't get a great contract afterwards. He didn't last much longer in the league afterwards. So I think it's a brave move to even mention it, but I do believe give it 2-3 weeks, we won't even be talking about this anymore. All of this will be forgotten because clearly the Giants now are saying, right, let's go back to the table. Let's get this sorted. We don't want you being that disgruntled player who's not here. But in the same sense, we also want to make sure that we look good as an organisation and look after one of our own.
Yeah, I mean, we've got, a month and 3 days till that tag deadline on July 17th. I think that the deal's going to be tied up by then. You know, with what has been reported today, it makes it seem like the team want to get it done. They're going to meet with his representatives. They're going to meet with him, and they're going to get it done. You know, and it obviously, like you said, the deal before wasn't quite what they wanted, so that's why they turned it down. Now, obviously, it's back on the table. They're going to have to maybe change a couple of little things in there. Like I said, a bit of additional guaranteed money, maybe. And, you know, we're signing 26 up for another, you know, potentially long-term deal. So it's a win-win, really. And it means then we can really sort of properly focus on training camp, because obviously after this week of mini camps, there's nothing else for a month because the players all go away for a summer break. So yeah, get the deal done soon. So then when it comes to training camp starting in July, everyone's there, everyone's fresh, and everyone's ready to go. And it'll only be detrimental to the team to have Barkley holding out and sitting out of camp. And it'll be detrimental to him as well. So yeah, I can't see the deal not getting done anytime, within the next 4 weeks. I think it'll be done.
Bear in mind, his mini camp's not going to happen for him now. Today,
No.
So they have another day of mini camp tomorrow. They've already said that they're having a cookout. So nobody's really doing anything with pads on, and probably nothing more than a little bit of rib eating action back and forth like that, and that's about as far as it's going to go. So up until we actually get into the nitty gritty in August or sort of mid July. It's a moot point. They've got loads of time now.
Yeah,
Definitely.
and also just quickly, he's been working out as well with Giants gear. He's had his helmet on and stuff so I can't see this dragging out. I think he was more annoyed that some things got leaked, that there was a 14 million deal on the table and they turned it down. And I think he was more agreed with the fact that people don't know the exact details of it. It's okay to throw out 14 million per year as a number, but it's all about guarantees and stuff, and how much players guaranteed against injury, incentive-based guarantees, and all that type of stuff. So I think it will get worked out quite quickly. And like you were saying, Craig, there's a big gap now. So he's missed this part, fine. There's a big gap now to sort of get things done. He's going to be fit. He's going to come back fit. He's going to come back ready. So yeah, I think we'll all look back once this is done, and in the end of July, and the team sort of preparing for the season, as they're we all, we knew it would happen. See, it wasn't really a big deal. And
yeah, we all know it's going to happen eventually. Did you put yourself on mute then, Kev, by any chance? I thought it sounded like you're in the middle of saying something. You put yourself on mute.
I think the last thing I will say about the Barkley thing is it's not Saquon either that's sort of slowing it down. I was listening to a podcast, I think it might have been last week, another Giants US-based one, and they were saying Joe Shane's a little bit pissed off with his agent. So he's made it clear that, look, it's not an issue with Saquon. Me and Saquon are good. But the podcast in question said that Joe Shane has admitted to people within the building, I wish he had a different representative. And so that it could be that Saquon's saying, yeah, I do like this deal, and it's his agent who's saying, no, don't sign it, and maybe making things more difficult than they actually need to be.
Bloody agents. I just wish they'd do a Lamar Jackson to be your own agent, or have your mum as your agent.
Or one of us.
Oh, I mean, Saquon, if you need an agent, one of the four of us, or all four of us, will happily represent you, and we'll take a cut of your contract as well. But anyway, moving on. Minicamp got underway yesterday as the final part of phase 3 of the off-season program started off. Once this OTA is over, like I said, the team will break for summer and reconvene for the start of training camp next month. Former players Michael Strahan and Brandon Jacobs attended Tuesday's first session, as did Hall of Fame coach Bill Parcells, and he also addressed the team as a group on the field. Today saw Chad Powers, aka Eli Manning, dropping by camp also. Apart from Barkley, the team, the whole team were in perfect attendance, and Dabes was asked about Barkley being absent, but yet again, they said they were keeping it private, which understandably he doesn't want to talk about. He doesn't want to deflect away from the things that the team are doing, so I don't blame him for doing that. Bobby McCain, so little highlights. Bobby McCain had 2 picks on Tuesday, one a pick 6 of Tyrod Taylor, and he also defended a pass. And Nick Cloud was the man who got the most first team reps alongside McKinney at safety, despite Bobby McCain getting those 2 picks on Tuesday. And a little bit of sort of a update from today, there was a bit of an injury scare with Adoree Jackson appearing to injure his left ankle while contesting a deep pass to Paris Campbell. Though he did seem to walk off the field at the end after being treated, so touch wood that it's nothing serious and it's just a little knock. But how do you think the roster is shaping up and is looking as we get closer to training camp, Kev?
Yeah, I think it's shaping up really nicely, actually. You know, there's Nick McLeod coming in and getting a lot of first team reps, not all of them, but getting a lot of first team reps is a nice surprise, actually, because he was always a bigger physical corner anyway. He's a very smart player. So him making the transition to safety, which is being confirmed now today by the DB's coach, can't remember his name. He's actually confirmed that he has moved to safety full time now. I think it could allow McKinney to do the free safety role, and Nick McLeod be that sort of more tackling, assured man coverage of tight ends and stuff like that, and running backs in the strong safety position. So middle linebacker is the one I'm sort of keeping my eye on as well. Obviously, we won't get to see much now until end of July. But it's really shaping up well. I mean, the D line just looks so stout, with the additions of Ashawn Robinson and Nacho, and for once we're starting to get like a real bit of depth in the team, which we never had. We've been thin for so long. So it's really interesting to see. I mean, we'll get on to the wide receivers and stuff like that now, but from what I can gather as well, Paris Campbell's just slotted in. And I think that trip to Arizona with Daniel Jones and the new, Waller, all the new signings and also the receivers that were there last year, I think has been fantastic because they've been able to come in and hit the ground running. And apparently we're seeing the dividends for that.
Big thing when you look at a lot of the players as well is that a lot of our second-year players have gone away, had that first little taste of the NFL and realised this is bigger, this is faster, there's a lot more nuance to this. But in the terms of this is bigger, if you look at, Daniel Bellinger has turned into the Incredible Hulk over the off-season and come back like an absolute tank. But Cordell Flott as well seems to have put on a nice bit of heft to him. It's very likely with the draft pick of Banks that Flott will now slot into that slot corner position ahead of Darnay Holmes, I would imagine. But just putting on that little bit extra heft is gonna hold him in good stead for tackling, and he's probably not going to get brushed aside as much as he did. And admittedly, he did play outside, which is not his natural position. But I'll be interested to see how that happens because they have said that the DBs are being rotated and that everyone's getting a chance at the ones. Not really anything to do with how the depth chart's gonna look, but really just to kind of see where people are at and who potentially will be the starters come week 1.
Apologies for Craig getting a bit slotty there.
Yeah.
Shame.
Yeah, I think if that's something, the one word I'd use is kind of intriguing because I think both sides of the ball, there's a bit of interest as to how the depth chart is actually going to shape up. If you look at wide receiver, we've mentioned it before. There's no true wide receiver one. I mean, you could even turn around and say Darren Waller's going to be the tight end one, wide receiver one, or receiver one, I should say. But like beyond that, there's a lot of challenges with players playing against each other. Who's going to slot in where, and then other side of the ball, you've got the same thing at DB as well. I think the point on Flotty is quite important because the one knock on him last year from many people, definitely from myself, and I want to say Kev potentially, however, I don't want to get putting words in his mouth, but it was that he was a little bit undersized and he needed to add a little bit more size to him. So it's good that he's gone away and done that. And then in regards to Bellinger putting the size on, it's going to be interesting if he's chose to do that himself, or is there a plan that, okay, look, Waller's going to be the main target. We want to use Bellinger more in a run blocking role, so put a bit of muscle on so you can assist, especially with the struggles that Evan Neal had last year as well. So it's just intriguing. It's probably the word I'd use to how camp's shaping up, and you've got the DBs in the back as well. So who's going to be pairing up with McKinney? There's people are being rotated. Obviously, we've got a gap to fill with Love now off the team. So it's just going to be intriguing to see who takes that spot as well.
I'm looking forward to the competition I'm going to see in camp. Really, there's going to be a lot of competition in camp, and it's going to be a healthy competition. And like you said, we've got some depth in place now with some of the signings we've made in during sort of the last few months. There is some depth at some of these positions now, and it's not just some pieces in there, just not some bodies in there just to fill that gap. It's actually quality depth as well. That we can rotate these guys off the bench more often and more regularly. So it allows the starters, as you will, more chance to have a breather and to get off the field and not play snap in, snap out all the time. So I'm really looking forward to camp, looking forward to seeing how the roster shapes up towards the end of August and into September, come final cut day and a 53-man roster.
I'm glad Adori got injured as well, defending a pass, and that he didn't roll his ankle whilst returning a punt. So let's hope any injuries are related to that rather than punting.
Yeah, man, at least he was doing his job, He was doing his job, what he's meant to be doing, and not catching and returning punts, which none of us want to see ever again. Don't do it. Stop. Anyway, that's the news. Not much else going on in the Giants world at the moment, because we are coming up to that point of the year where nothing does happen. Like I said, that sort of summer break that sort of extends into July before training camp starts. So, that's all the news covered for now. Continuing on from the stellar job you three did a couple of weeks ago and breaking down our quarterbacks and running backs, we are focusing, like I said, on Daniel Jones's targets for next season. They're going to be under the microscope off the back of last season, which was a position of need going into the draft. It's our wideouts, and thankfully there will be no mention of the $72 million man, Kenny Golladay, on this list. So Kev, who are we starting off with?
Yeah, we're going to start off with sort of like player that's been at the Giants throughout Daniel Jones' whole career, and that's Darius Slayton. He's a fifth-round pick back, whatever draft it was like, but he played his final year of his rookie contract last year, and it kind of looked like they didn't want to play him. He wasn't really given much chance, and he actually took a pay cut to stay with the team. He was only due to make about $3 million, but he dropped that down to $1 million at the request of the team to be able to stay on the team. And he didn't see many targets to begin the season. But he started to show some real positive signs, and obviously due to injury, he started to get more game time. And he recorded his highest reception percentage of his career. To caught 46 receptions on 71 targets. His best game last season was the Week 10 matchup against Houston Texans. He had 3 receptions for 95 yards and a touchdown. So he showed real promise because he has got speed. He's a true 4.3 speedster, but last year again, he did have 6 drops. And that was the 3rd consecutive season. He's leading the team in drops. So he does sort of have that against him, sort of so he can tidy that up. He could be a solid player for Daniel Jones. His stats from last year were, like I said, 724 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns, 15 yards per reception, 267 yards after the catch. He had a long of 55. But he did have those 6 drops, which was tied 8th in the league. So it is interesting to see where he'll go this year. He signed a 2-year deal. A lot of people didn't think he'd be back. He did have better offers on the table from other teams, but he actually chose to take a lesser offer, 2 years, $12 million, to come back. I did like his quote when he was asked about, the incomings of players and the type of players they brought in. And he did say, you've got a bunch of Ferraris. You're not just going to leave them in the garage. You want to get them out on the track. So I really hope we brought in a lot of players, a lot of wide receivers. He has to sort of really show out now, I think, this year, because I think we've made bringing in Darren Waller is, like Shane said, that's going to be our number 1 target. That's our number 1 receiver. He's a tight end, yes. He'll be flexed all over the place, but he will be like the number 1 guy. Now, Darius Slayton has an opportunity now to go out and really sort of put up some serious numbers, but we've added real depth now. Although we don't have a number 1 wide receiver, we have added a lot of number 2s, like number 3 wide receivers. So if he isn't on game, there's definitely players there to be able to take his spot if he's not performing. But, I wish him the best. We want him to do. He's a 5th-round pick. We've re-signed him to his 2nd contract. He's a player we want to do well. Him and Daniel Jones have chemistry. So, yeah, I have high hopes for him. But, again, he needs to sort those drops out.
I mean, I think we re-signed him to a new contract for a reason, really, didn't we? I was a little bit surprised we re-signed him, considering the issues he's had with dropping the ball, and he's not been the most consistent of receivers. But Shane and Dave's obviously see something in him that they wanted to bring him back into the team, and they signed him to a new deal. So, I'm hopeful that he proves his doubters wrong and he does well in 2023. I've been one of his doubters in the past, as we all have, no doubt. But I think he's definitely got something to give to this team. Shane, who's up next?
Yeah, so up next we've got a guy that I think everyone's become a bit of a fan of, including all of ourselves, and that's Isaiah Hodgins. He was cut by the Buffalo Bills. Obviously, Daves and Joe knew him from their time there, so they kind of snapped him up. He signed a new deal in February. He was exclusive rights free agent. And I think we're all pleased that he's back. I think the word I describe Hodgins is like solid, reliable. Like Kev mentioned, Slayton has the drops. Isaiah Hodgins doesn't have the drops, and he kind of, as the season went on, when we first got him, and then you look at how he performed like sort of towards the end, he was obviously building chemistry with Daniel Jones. He felt comfortable in the system, and I think some of that come from coming to join the Giants, where Daves and Shane are, and they know him, he knows them. And I think he only got cut really because the Bills have got like quite a good receiving core at the time. He didn't get cut because he was shit. He just got cut because they had too many. And I think it was one of them that hoped they could stash him. But luckily for us, our coaches know their shit, unlike previous ones. And they were like, boom, we're all over that. And I think that's been a little bit of a trait of this team. This front office, I should say, sorry. But he had 392 yards for 4 touchdowns, 10.6 yards per reception and 94 yards after the catch. And as I say, he had no drops. And I think for me, he's kind of become what I expected Kenny Golladay to become, in all honesty. Like, Golladay was meant to be that, sort of bigger receiver who's not quick. Isaiah Hodgins hasn't got speed. I'm not saying they're exactly alike, but you want Hodgins to be that. You wanted Golladay to be that guy that Daniel can look. Nothing else is on. I'm confident I can throw it to him and he's going to bring it down. And that's what Hodgins is like, in my opinion. Now, you guys might not 100% agree, but that's just how I kind of see him. And I'm really hoping that now this year, he was already familiar with the system anyway, but now having a full pre-season with him as well. Like we've mentioned, all the previous targets that we've brought in, Campbell, Slayton coming back, Waller, hopefully Barkley, and he'll be able to still shine in the system as well.
Yeah, I think with Hodgins scoring, was it 4 in the last 5 games? It's exciting, wasn't it? And it like you said, it should have been what Kenny Golladay should have been. And I still think this is a sneakily good little pickup from Buffalo. Like you said, he wasn't quite good enough to be on their roster because they had so much talent there, but he's more than good enough for us, and he's proven how good he can be. 4 scores in the last 5 games. That's what you want from potentially your number one receiver, is to score week in, week out. And if he can carry on that sort of production, I can see him being Dan Jones's top target this season. I really can.
Sometimes players just need opportunity, don't they? And he wasn't getting that at the Bills. And Shane's 100% right. They stashed him, hoping no one would pick him up in the practice squad. But our front office was on the ball, and Hodges had that. He has opportunity. He came in and shown that he could hack it. He got valuable reps that should help him this.
And that's the thing. That's the risky run with practice squad guys, is that they can be picked up by another team just like that. And it's happened with us before. We've had players on the practice squad and they've been snapped up. So, unfortunately for Buffalo, but fortunately for us, we got a real sort of, almost like he was a bit of a diamond in the rough last year, wasn't he? Really, but he's come good and he's starting to shine, and his route running, his production is solid. So I'm looking forward to watching him during camp and seeing what he can produce in a full season. That's for sure. All right, Craig, a new addition to the team. Who you got?
Yeah, I mean, potentially the diamond in the rough for this season. He might not like being called the diamond in the rough, but he has that potential. He's Paris Campbell. So obviously we've picked him up from the Colts, where he had 3 years of just awful injury luck between 2019 and 2021, playing just 15 games, but played all games last year. was productive when he was on the field. Let's not forget the Colts quarterback situation last season was absolutely horrific. So all of his stats don't sound great, but for what he did in that system, they're pretty damn good. When he was on the field, he flashes his explosive acceleration and his top end speed. He did it on a couple of occasions last year for the Colts. 28-yard jet sweep against the Commanders in Week 8. He had a catch and run touchdown against the Raiders in Week 10. 623 receiving yards, 3 touchdowns, 9.9 yards per reception. Only 4.5 yards after the catch, which is quite surprising given his speed. But like you said, that can probably be attributed to the quarterback. And, the wide receiver can only make yards after the catch if they're led into a pass. If you're not being led into a pass, you're not going to be able to add that on. I think diamond in the rough is a good way of summing it up. I think the easiest way to sum it up is high reward, low risk, high reward. One year deal. If he stays healthy, he's a speedy receiver, will be a reliable target for Jones. Kev did a lot of our depth charts, and Kev's popped him in at the slot position. I believe that's probably a position where you get the ugly yards, you get the sort of quick yards out of the position, and he's 6 foot, so his height is weirdly at 6 foot, a lot higher than a lot of the other receivers we seem to have there. So, if he stays healthy, I think we were onto a winner there, but low risk because of the fact it's only a 1 year deal. So, looking forward to seeing how he performs in the system.
Yeah, definitely low risk with that 1 year contract, compared to some previous contracts that have been dished out by ex-general managers who we won't name. I like Paris Campbell, I think the production he had in Indianapolis last year, the team was absolute garbage last year. And for him to get 3 scores, 620 yards out of a team that finished, what's their last finish? I don't know their finishing record, the record they finished the season with, but they didn't win many games. So, not bad. And I think he could be sneaky good in the slot. I really do. I think Dan Jones likes a decent slot guy. And I think Paris Campbell can be that. And I think we might see some big numbers from Paris Campbell this year.
Who's getting slotty now, Dan?
You know it, baby. You know it. All right, so they're the sort of 3 perceived starters as such in Campbell and Slayton and Hodgins. There we go. God, how can I not? We talked about it 2 minutes ago. Bloody hell! See, still hungover from the weekend. So out of those sort of 3 perceived starters, who do you guys think is going to have the biggest impact this season? Kev, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I'm a big Paris Campbell guy. When we were talking about potential realistic free agent wide receivers we should target, he was one I suggested on the podcast. And also, I did also make a bold statement that he would lead the Giants in receiving yards this year. So I actually think that, he can play inside, he can play outside. Like Craig said, he's 6 foot, 200 pounds. He's a bigger receiver than your Wan'Dale Robinson type receivers. And obviously he will get first crack at it. He's been starting there in these OTAs and mini camps and stuff because Wan'Dale's still coming back from injury. So I think he'll have the first foot in that position. So I'm actually very high. It's the injury. He is a speedster. He's a true 4.3 receiver coming out of Ohio State. And it was all just, his first 3 seasons, he was marred by injuries. Injuries are so unlucky last year. He stayed healthy and he produced a pretty bad quarterback. So, he's definitely one that I think will make the biggest impact.
Thanks for the comment, Tony. Evening and download was epic. Craig.
I think I've got to agree with Kev, really. Paris Campbell, to me, just seems like that kind of steady, move the chains, pick up the dirty yards. I know I've already said that, but that to me is kind of what epitomizes the wide receiver position. Is sometimes you've just got get the dirty bits. We don't need an explosive play won't happen every single play unless you're playing Madden on rookie. That's the only way you're going to get 99-yard receptions every single play. And you've got to admit, the amount of times that we were third and long in the last few seasons is just too high. We need to get better at creating third and short. Now, Barkley's obviously going to help, and we're going to assume he signs. Waller and Bellinger are also going to help, but that slot position really does open up not just those, but also sometimes can give the outside guys less attention, especially if you've got someone good in the slot. So, I think I'm going to agree with Kev there.
So we've gone from getting slotty to getting dirty. Shane.
Yes, I think the guy I'm going to give someone slightly different, and it's a guy that has been slated at times, but I am a fan of him, and I did want us to bring him back, and that's Darius Slayton. He's been in New York now for a few years. He's got that chemistry with Daniel Jones. He just needs to eliminate them drops that Kev mentioned. If he can get rid of them drops, he can be a really decent wide receiver, I think. I like his attitude, like Kev mentioned. He took the pay cut to stay on the team. There was a quote come out from him last year, and I think it was something along the lines of what he said when he was playing Pee-wee football or whatever it is over there. When he wasn't in the team, his parents didn't go and run to the coach saying, "Why is my son not playing?" They used to say to Darius himself, "Okay, you're not in the team. What are you going to do about it then?" And that's the attitude and mentality that you want, not just on this team, but you need that attitude and mentality in NFL and competitive sport in general. And I just love that mentality of, okay, you know what, you want to cut me or try and trade me? Nah, I'll take a pay cut, show you why you should keep me, and I'll get some extra money. And I just love that mentality. And he's someone who I really hope can kick on now and sort of get close. I'd love to see him get close to that 1,000 yards. I really would, because for a guy that was taken in the 5th round, it's kind of nice to see him get re-signed and have some success, because we've not had that success with them day 3 picks. So, I'm really rooting for Slayton this season.
Before I tell you who I'm going with, even Steve and I think what you said is absolutely right. I think some of our receivers could be absolute steals in fantasy leagues this year. Not just the 3 we're talking about now, but potentially some of the ones coming up as well. So thanks for watching, mate. I'm going to go with Hodgins, man. I think Campbell could have a huge impact. I think Slayton could have a huge impact. But I think Hodgins, based off of what he produced in those 5 games last year, there's obviously that chemistry there between him and Dan Jones. And I just like him as a receiver. I think he's got a lot to offer. He's got a bit of speed. His route run is good. He can clearly catch the ball, and that's what you need in that outside guy that we haven't had for a few years. So I think I can see Hodgins having a 1,000-yard season this year. I really can. So I'm going to go with Hodgins. But yeah, I equally agree that the other 2 can have a pretty big impact as well. So, I'm pretty positive about our receivers so far. Let's face it. All right, so Kev, who's up next?
Up next is the darling of the draft, isn't it? It's Jalen Hyatt. He's a rookie, a player who was mocked to us multiple times at number 25 in the 1st round. We were definitely ready to take him in the 2nd round. We valued him as a 2nd round player, and he's there for us in the 3rd round. They make a nice move up to go and get him. He had a spectacular 2022. He went for 1,267 yards, 3rd in the country at college. He went for 15 touchdowns. Tied 1st in at college. He had an outstanding performance against Alabama, Nick Saban's Alabama. He caught 6 passes for 207 yards and 5 touchdowns. He was regarded as the premier deep threat in this draft. And, people are overlooking this, saying, a lot of people will question the route running and stuff like that. And he's already shown in camp. The wide receivers coach has come out and said it yesterday or today. He can run all the right tree. He's really crisp in his routes, and that just excites me about what the potential could be going forward for him. He's a dynamic receiver. He can play inside, outside. Versatility is one thing this coaching staff has shown, is that the more you can do, they want the versatility, and they will put him all over the field in different matchups, and he is an absolute matchup nightmare. I know he ran 4.4 at the combine, but he's faster than that. He really is. He's probably going to ease into the offense. We won't see him sort of starting at the beginning of the season. He might not get that many snaps, to be fair, at the beginning of the season, but this is a player, back to Steve going on about fantasy. I mean, you draft this guy late and you stash him because I think he could have a fantastic breakout second half of the season. The more Daniel Jones gets comfortable with the second-year offense, the more he gets comfortable with the receivers, the more he gets comfortable in himself. He will be taking more deep shots. And to have someone with his ability to get open deep, you've got to take that. So, I just think I'm very, very hopeful, very excited about this player. But just, you might not see too much of him to begin the season.
No, and I'd be surprised if we saw a lot of him to start the season off. But just looking back at his stats from last year, almost 19 yards per reception. I mean, who on our team last year had almost 19 yards per reception? So that's not just moving the chains. That's just taking chunk after chunk after chunk. That's moving the team down the field quickly. I don't expect that, from our offense. I expect it to be, calculated and methodical with the odd sort of big play here and there. But he's clearly got the talent. He's clearly got the ability. He's clearly got the speed. I'm going to ask you guys a question in a minute, but I'm mega, mega excited about Jalen Hyatt. I really am. I can't hide the grin on my face every time I talk about it. Every time I was saying to you, Craig, the other day at Download, every time I see something more on him, the more I like him, the more I think he's just the absolute bargain, absolute steal of the draft this year. And it can only mean good things for this team, having him on the roster for the next 4 years. It really can, Craig, Shane, anything to add on Jalen Hyatt?
No, I'm not as high on him as other people am. Now, that's not me saying I think he's shit or he's going to be a bust. Just because I'm not high on somebody doesn't mean I want him to fail or anything like that. I think he's still got a lot to learn. It annoys me when you see people saying about the route running. It's a valid point because it's a valid point because that's what he was asked to do at college. It's not. He's got a limited route tree, yes, because that was what he was asked to do. We're not saying he can't do it or he can't learn it. He's 21 years old or something. I wouldn't expect him to be able to run every single route tree anyway. Like he's going to do some learning and some development. Now I'm just saying I'm not as high on him as some other people, and I've got to be honest. I don't think he's going to be as productive this year as what he will be next year. I think there's going to be some learning to be done in the NFL in his rookie season. I don't expect him to see the field straight away when you look at the guys that are in front of him that we've already mentioned, just at the wide receiver position, not mentioning tight ends and running back and all that. So I'm not as high on him as some people. That's not me saying I don't like him. That's not me saying I want him to fail. I just think he's got some learning to do, and I think I'll be more excited next year for what he can bring to the table.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I do know what you mean. I think the biggest thing for me is I've read so much on Jalen Hyatt and heard so much from you guys on him that when you look at the people who doubt him and aren't sure about him, it's other general managers, it's scouts, it's the analytical people that don't seem to be very high. And then you hear about other players talking about him and, people who've played the position previously, even some, someone like Ocho Cinco, who's turned around and said, this kid is going to be it. This kid is going to break out. And I mean, obviously, somebody's got to be wrong and somebody's got to be right there. It's just very interesting to me that the people who have played the position seem to get him, and the people who analyse the position day in, day out, and make the suggestions to the GMs to make the picks are the ones that just don't seem to see it. And I'm just more inclined to trust people who've, you know, put on those cleats and played the position.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. I mean, is he being a little bit overhyped? Do you think?
Probably. I think, yeah.
Kev, do you think he's being overhyped?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, with any sort of rookie, there's going to be a learning curve anyway into the NFL. No sort of player comes in and bees Jamar Chase straight away. Like, we know that. That's why I was saying, like, you know, as excited I am for what he could be, Sheehan said it next year. That's why I was kind of getting at, we won't see a lot of him to begin the season. It needs to be eased in, but he could sort of take off at this second half season. And when I say take off, I mean contribute positively. I don't mean come out and be an absolute superstar, one of the best receivers in the league. I don't mean that. I mean just positively contribute to the team in the second half of the season.
Yeah, cool. You know, exciting times that we're talking about a fourth receiver in this list that is potentially got a long future ahead of him, an exciting future ahead of him. Someone that missed the whole of the 2022 season, Shane. Who's up next?
Yeah, so it was kind of, could you class him as last year's David Sills potentially? He was a little bit of a camp standout in Colin Johnson. Opener against Patriots in pre-season, he had 7 catches for 82 yards. He was starting to see reps with the ones, and he looked like, you know, especially when you look at our wide receiver group last year, it looked like he might have seen some genuine playing time. And unfortunately, he went and tore his Achilles, and that did him for the season. He's got a bit of a battle to get back into to make the 53 this year, I think. But I think what could help him is other players who we'll probably discuss shortly, starting the season on the pup, might enhance his chances of sort of seeing some time and showing why he should be part of that 53. Now, if he does that, that's going to be a tough decision for Dable and Kafka essentially to have and decide what to do. But you know, he's someone who I think he's everything I've read so far in OTAs and that he's just basically carried on where he left off last year. He's been a bit, again, I'll use this word a lot, it seems, but reliable in OTAs and that. And also he's 6'6". You know, he's a bit of a beast. So, you know, if you've got Waller who's 6'7", and you've got Colin Johnson who's 6'6" on the field at the same time, there's not many people that are going to be able to kind of like have the cover skills to keep up with them and cover them both in them contested catches and that. So definitely a name I think to keep an eye on in this in mini camp and in pre-season matches.
Definitely disappointed that he missed out on the whole of last year because I think he could have produced, but I'm excited to see him back in camp, back and healthy, and hopefully making the roster and producing for the team as well, because I think he's got a lot to give. Kev, another new addition to the wide receiver room. Who you got? Oh no, is it Kev or is it Craig next? It's Craig next. Apologies, Kev. I'll skip Craig. Another receiver home for a big comeback. Who have you got, Craig?
Yeah, so Wan'Dale Robinson obviously had a bit of an up and down season last year. Slow start to the season. I think he was injured week 1, didn't come back until week 5, played in week 6, and then tore his ACL in week 11, ending his season. I mean, the big bummer was really that the game in which he tore his ACL, it looked like the breakout for Wan'Dale. I mean, 9 catches, 100 receiving yards on the spot. He just looked like he was ready to take the offense by the scruff of the neck. And at a time where we were really, really struggling to get the ball sort of moving, especially to our receivers. So, you know, I'm looking forward to seeing where he ends up. He might end up on the PUP list. It might just be a bit too soon. I mean, week 11 is quite late to tear your ACL and then make it back for week 1. going into a second season, despite those kind of little breakouts, he is a relative unknown and probably has just as much as a chance as Hyatt really as becoming a breakout star this year. So, he's young, he's got a unique skill set, a unique size, and he gives Kafka an exciting weapon to work with once he's healthy.
I think we've seen glimpses of what he can produce and the talent he has. And Wandale year 2, I'm excited for. Granted, he's probably going to not start the season healthy because, week 11 is what? Middle of November? Just before Thanksgiving, isn't it? Mm. So for him to come back from an ACL tear in 9 to 10 months is very, very tight. It's asking a lot. So I can see him potentially coming into play second half of the season for sure. But first, 6 to 8 games, he'll be very sort of limited if we see him at all. But again, excited about Wandale Robinson because I think he's got a lot of talent and he's got a lot to give. So, Kev, who's the new addition?
Yeah, new addition. We've got coming all the way over from the noisy neighbours over there in New York Jets. We have Jeff Smith. He seems like an older receiver. We've got some really, really good, young, promising receivers. We've talked about a few of them already. And he's only 26, Jeff Smith. But he is one of the receivers, I think he was like 4th or 5th in the depth chart for the Jets. He ended up finishing the season on IR after an injury last year. But he did log a lot of snaps. I think it was 86 snaps on special teams. And I think he will be sort of a special team. He's a fast receiver as well. He clocked, a 4.3 guy again at the combine, He's uphill battle though to make this roster. I think if he does make it, it will be more to back end of the roster as more of a special teams guy. So I'm interested to see what he can do. We haven't really heard much of him standing out in camp or anything like that. So part of me is kind of like hoping other players come back from injury, other players, young players, sort of make more of a push to make the roster. But he's very much on that bubble.
I know nothing about the guy. I'm not going to lie. He's got a bit of a boring name, Jeff Smith. But it's cool if he's made some impact in special teams. We could always do some help in special teams. We could always do some punt returners because God knows it won't be a Dory Jackson doing that next season. So there's if he impresses, there's a spot for him. If he doesn't, then practice squad. Potentially. So, and the fact that he's, how many years has he been in the league? 4 or 5 years, something like that. He's 26.
4 years, yeah.
4 years. So yeah, he's got some experience. So he can bring something to the team for sure. All right, Shane, a returning veteran, Mr. Giants himself. Do I need to say anymore?
Yeah, hands down the best cheerleader the Giants have ever had, even though they don't have any. Sterling Shepard, obviously, again, he suffered another injury last year. Hate to use the word another, but he just seemed to have them kind of season by season. He tore his ACL in week 3 against the Cowboys. A bit of a shame because I think one of the standout plays for me last year that probably not mentioned much was the reception that he had in that Titans game in week 1. Really got the game moving and sort of helped us on our way to getting the dub in that game. But, he wasn't involved for the rest of the season, but, he did what you love to see your veterans do and players that care. He was there the whole time. I think Andy or Keith might have mentioned that the Packers game is right in front of them, getting the crowd up. And obviously you've seen it on social media as well, not just at the Packers game here in London, but at other games in playoffs, etc. So, kind of really gets beyond the team and it embodies what you want a teammate to be like when they're not fit, rather than just saying, yeah, I've done my ACL, I can't be arsed with a 5, 6, 9 hour flight, I'm just going to stay at home and do whatever they do. We made the effort, went along, supported his teammates, and you love to see it, to be fair. He's one who I think will start on the pup, but we seen last year he made an insane recovery from his injury that we didn't think he tore his Achilles late in the season, like about October, November time, and he was ready for week 1, which amazed everybody.
I love Sterling Shepard. That's what I'm going to say. I love him. He embodies everything it is to be a Giants player. And like I said, even if he doesn't play, he's going to be there supporting the team. He's going to be a team captain, no doubt. So he's going to be there for the young rookies and the young second year guys that are in the squad, and the new guys that will come in as well. So what more is there to say about him than he lives and breathes blue. He lives and breathes Giants, and it's nice to see him back in the team anyway. So yeah, 4 receivers that are coming back from season-ending injuries. Who's got the toughest path to the main roster, do you think? Shane.
You're going to hate coming to me. Like my controversial choices and answers. I'm going to go Mr. Cheerleader himself, Sterling Shepard. I think the injuries, how long he's been with the team. Obviously, he's getting older now, so he's one of the older ones. I think someone like Jeff Smith, he's going to be there for his special teams play rather than his capability at wide receiver. But I think Sterling he's obviously back for I think it was a 1-year deal. Was it vet minimum or something very similar to that? I'm going to go. I'm going to go for Shep, unfortunately, and I'm going to hide now for the rest of the answers.
Kev's getting out the tissues, mate.
Fucking get out. Don't speak to me.
If you want, I can slate Notre Dame players. I don't mind doing that one.
Brutal. Kev, who do you think's got the toughest path?
Yeah, I think it's Jeff Smith. I think, like I said, it hasn't really given much in the receiving game. I know he's been a very good gunner in the special teams, but I just think if it was coming down to either of them players and they're both fit, raring to go, I think Sterling Shepard would just make the roster ahead of Jeff Smith.
And Craig, who do you reckon?
I think Jeff Smith as well. And the only reason that I'm not saying Sterling Shepard is twofold. One, he can start the season on PUP. So technically he's not going to make the roster anyway, in a weird sense. But second of all, there's been some videos of him. And the man's a Terminator. Like, seriously, how is he making cuts and catches like he's made today after 2 season-ending injuries? It's just ridiculous. So I think we're going to come on to another potential special teamer in a few answers, but I do think Jeff Smith's age and lack of actual wide receiver experience probably negates him away from someone who potentially could come in and just be a special teams person.
I have to say I agree with Kevin and Craig. Because I think I don't know him. I think Shane makes a valid point that Shep has got a difficult way to go. But I think Jeff Smith, the very little I know about him that I've just learned in the last 2 minutes, it seems like he's probably got the toughest path. But he could surprise everybody. You never know. Camp's coming up. We don't know yet, so watch this space, I suppose. All right, Craig, someone that just seems to hang around, like a bad smell, doesn't seem to go away.
Yeah, Mr. David Seals is next on the list. Admittedly, he did make an impact early on last season when we had no wide receivers, which is probably why. But, he appeared in 9 games. He started 5, 11 receptions, 106 yards. It's just when Hodgins came in, that was kind of the nail in the coffin, I think, for Seals, in the fact that despite him playing games earlier on in the season, Hodgins being a practice squad member predominantly, someone who didn't really, feature for the Bills, He pretty much just took all of what Sills was doing and did it better. And then Sills was cut after week 17 before we went into the playoffs and signed to the practice squad. You know, he's a perennial camp body. Is pretty much what he is, and he made the jump to the main roster at the beginning of last season. But I think it's highly unlikely history repeats itself.
Yeah, I think have we given David Sills enough chances?
I think so.
I think we probably have. I think we probably have. You know, he's produced at some level. We'll see what happens in camp, but I can't see him being anything but practice squad, realistically. Kev, star of Hard Knocks from last year. Ooh. You're on mute.
I'm going to go off script a little bit quickly, lads, because I do have to shoot off, and I want to get this guy in before I go.
Go on.
And I'm going to talk about Bryce Ford Wheaton, undrafted free agent out of West Virginia. Now, I had a 5th round grade on him. I had him like a little bit higher than other people. You know, I think, last season, for West Virginia, he played 12 games, 62 catches, 675 yards, over 10 yards per catch. He had 7 touchdowns. You know, he's 6'3", 6'4". He's 220 pounds. He runs a 4.38 40. You know, he was such a coveted free agent that the Giants gave him pretty much the most they could give an undrafted free agent. They give him like a full year's worth of practice squad salary. You know, this is a player that really excites me, and like, you know, I can see him sneaking onto the actual roster. Like, he can contribute this season, I do believe, in some capacity. And I just think if you put him on the practice squad, I think it's too good a chance of what someone doing a Hudgens and nicking him from us for everything. You know, he's athletic. He can make contested catches. There's flaws to his game, of course, but he put up a 9.97 RAS score, so there's something to work with there. Like I said, he might not contribute that much this season, but, he's like a raw sort of bit of clay that these wide receiver coaches would love to get their hands on and mold into something, that could be serviceable in this league.
And surely, because he was so highly touted as well at one point, surely you keep him around for special teams, if anything. Develop him, grow him as a player, grow him as a, give him that experience.
Exactly that. And on that note, lads, I'm going to have to shoot off.
Nice one, Kev. Appreciate you coming on, man.
Talk to you soon, boys.
See you later.
Mate. Just the 3 of us. We can make it if we... No, I'm done. Yeah, I like Bryce Ford Wheaton. I think he's probably... one of the standout undrafted free agency pickups again of the whole off season so far. I think he can potentially produce for us and use this first year as a learning curve and to develop and to turn him into a pretty decent receiver in this league. All right then, so that star of Hard Knocks is being passed over to you, Craig. So who we got?
Funny enough, this was supposed to be Kev's one, and ironically, it's been turned to me, and it's the person who I said I think will likely make it over Jeff Smith, which has worked out weirdly well. But yeah, Khalil Pimpleton. Bloody hell, that's hard to say. Pimpleton spent all of last year on the practice squad before being elevated for the Minnesota playoff game, but obviously didn't suit up. He was then signed to another sort of futures deal. And like Smith, he offers special teams credentials, and he's younger than Smith is by a couple of years. And I just feel like that may be his way onto the roster. And there is a chance he will just end up on the practice squad again, depending on the way that they decide to go. And at other positions, we have someone like Ahmed Gary, who potentially can play on special teams if they decide to carry 3 or 4 running backs. I'm sure nobody wants to see the Adoree Jackson experiment ever again, but I'm sure there's a few other wideouts and or DBs who could potentially just go back and catch a punt or catch a I mean, let's be honest, kickoff returns aren't really anything anymore. So all you need is a body out there who can catch a ball and wave their hand in the air. So, so Khalil Pimpleton. Why can't I say that word? Khalil Pimpleton is who I think may be our special teams guy.
Pimpleton, he's quick as well, so I can absolutely see him being that special teams guy. I really can. The practice squad last year, he's learnt his craft, he's developed as a player, and year 2 of Khalil Pimpleton, I think we could see him on the roster for special teams. Genuinely, I think that's an option. I think it's a very good option as well. Like I said, because the kickoff game doesn't really exist anymore. And the punting game as well, it's just like, oh yeah, fair catch, there you go. So, winner. All right, Shane, a somewhat unknown entity. Who we got next?
Yeah, so we've got Jaden Mickens up next. He was signed onto the practice squad mid-December. A little bit of an insurance policy for the now departed Richie James, who was going through a concussion at the time. And that's about it. Sorry, Jaden.
Who? Who? Jaden Mickens. Are you taking the mic? I mean, fair enough. If it was just practice squad. Cool, but I know nothing about the guy. Sorry.
He's got a mention on the Big Blue UK and Ireland podcast. So pinnacle of his career, I'm sure.
He's going to be famous. All right. Craig. A veteran hoping to make an impression.
Yeah. Someone who's he's kind of Crowder's kind of done the New York tour de force now, hasn't he? 3 teams in New York, and yes, I am saying New York, with us, the Jets, and the Bills, and he seems to have appeared on every one. Disappointing season last season for him. Appeared in 4 games, 6 catches, 60 yards, and then fractured his ankle while he was with the Bills. Could sneak onto the roster if Wandale and Shep both start the year on PUP, because he's a veteran and kind of brings that veteran experience that we probably want from Shep, but it's unlikely. And if he does, he'll be cut the instant one of those are back. So, there's not really much to say about Crowder.
I think he brings experience to the team. I think, he is that sort of veteran who's been there and done it. And can he still offer anything? Potentially. But we'll see. We'll see what happens with him. Like I said, he could sneak onto the roster. I think he probably will. But like you said, once sort of Wandale and Shep are back, then in all likelihood, unless he's produced really, really well, unless he's put out some big numbers and impressed the coaches, I think he might wave bye-bye after that. Alrighty. Lastly, Shane, round out the squad for us, mate.
Yeah, so the final one is McCoy Polk, undrafted free agent, signed and subsequently let go by the Ravens. And he spent all of 2022 on our practice squad. Again, another one kind of by name, and that's kind of about it, in all honesty.
Again, who? I mean,
McCoy.
Yeah, that guy, of course. How could I know? How could I forget?
Oh, Pokey.
Yeah, that guy, Pokey, yeah. He did really well in our practice squad last year, didn't he? No idea.
It's weird when you think about people on the practice squad, isn't it? That for people like ourselves who don't really get to see anything because all they really do is instill game plan from an opposition point of view for the first team offense or defense. we don't see a lot. I mean, the coaches and the backroom staff obviously see a lot more of these players than we do, and there's a reason that they sign some of them to future deals and some of them just get kicked out onto the streets. But it's really hard to try and gauge any kind of real sort of opinion on them, on whether they could be good or not, without going back to like college tape. And by then, their game's probably evolved massively, so it is hard.
Yeah, it is. But, that's not to knock anyone that is on the practice squad, because they do serve an important purpose. They are players on the team. They are part of the larger sort of team, I suppose. And they do play a huge role in week in, week out for the coaches and for the full squad as well. So not knocking them at all. It's just, like you said, it's very, very difficult to sort of find out more about them than those that are actually on the 53-man roster. All right, so the Giants had 9 different receivers catch passes last season. Most teams will carry 6 on a roster. So let's say Shep and Wandale start on the pup list. Pretty much lock in Slayton, Hyatt, Campbell, and Hodgins. Who are the other 2 on the roster, and why then, Shane?
So I'm just having a quick look and working out who we might have forgot, because I mean, you got studs like McCoy and everything. I want to make sure I've got them covered. So I'm gonna. So just to correct, so we got Slayton, Hodgins, Campbell, Hyatt, Wandale, and Shep on pup. So I'm going to go for Colin Johnson. I'm going to cheat. So I'm going to go for Colin Johnson. I'm going to go for Jamison Crowder. And I'm going for Jeff Smith. But Jeff Smith is on there purely for special teams.
So
7 wide receivers, but Smith is not going to see the field as a wide receiver unless something drastically goes wrong. And then I think Crowder will be the first player to get cut when Wandale or Shep, if they decide to keep him, whichever one of them two is first back.
Nice.
So it's interesting because Colin Johnson is one that I was going to say. And I also was going to cheat and do 7. Now, funny enough, while I was having a look at how many players tend to be on a roster for wide receivers, the Packers carried 7 last year. It's not unknown for that many to be on a roster. So I am going to go for Colin Johnson. I'm also going to go for the special team, but Khalil Pimpleton, because I just feel like he can add a little bit of something in there. And I think Shane's right. Jamison Crowder just makes sense because he almost seems like that kind of Shep cover and that veteran experience on the team that they're going to need. They're going to need someone of that ilk who's been, around the block and is able to kind of G up the players, but also go in and just make a catch and walk off, and that's it. Maybe even if he does it once or twice, and could even pull a Kenny Golladay-esque block, you could say. So yeah, I agree. Crowder's more likely. I did think about putting Bryce Ford Wheaton in here, and here's why. He has that kind of Cruise 2.0 kind of feeling about his story, where he goes into the preseason and he just balls out, and all of a sudden it's like, you get that clip of the Jets, wasn't it, that we were playing in the preseason, and yeah, it's like, who is that, and why is he? Could he be available? And the Giants were like, hell no, we got to tie this kid down. I just feel like there is a chance that he could be there, and I think if he is, then Crowder's out. But I mean, surely it's unanimous, Colin Johnson, right?
Yeah, Colin Johnson's unanimous. Yeah, number 3 scoring 3 against the Jets in pre-season in 2010. That guy you're wearing that jersey of, mate, Victor Cruz. He's the one. He's up there as well. He's up there as well. For me, yeah, Crowder and Johnson make the 53 as receivers. I think 2 make the roster for special teams. Khalil Pimpleton. And for some reason, I can just see Bryce Ford-Wheaton getting that roster spot as potentially a special teamer, potentially something. He's going to get on the roster. I think there's too much potential and talent there. Jeff Smith, I don't know anything about him, like I said, but he seems to be fairly good on special teams. He's coming back from an injury, so it might be a bit of a risk, but who knows? Camp is where this roster is decided, and I can't wait for it. There's you can make a case for every one of these receivers to get a spot on the roster, but I think David Sills practice and Jaden Mickens and Mackay Polk, whatever his name is. I think between those 3 practice squad / cut. I think if Bryce Ford-Wheaton goes to practice squad, we absolutely run the risk of losing him, and I don't think we should lose him off this roster. There we go. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I think with Bryce Ford-Wheaton, what I will say, I think it's going to go one way or the other. You're either going to see him and you're going to go, how did this guy not get drafted? Or you're going to go, yeah, I can see why he was an undrafted free agent.
Yeah, I've heard there's a lot of inconsistencies when it comes to him, and reading some scout reports, one scout kind of turned around and said he's either Megatron or he's someone playing in the park and just cannot catch anything. There seems to be no middle ground for him. He's very kind of hot and cold. So yeah, it'll be interesting. If he's got coachable kind of tangibles, which it seems he does from his RAS score. He could be the ultimate diamond in the rough, but it doesn't always happen, does it? But one thing I do want to just mention when it comes to the wide receivers is how much nicer this looks on paper as a wide receiver core of 12 players than what we've had to deal with in recent years, since Odell's gone.
Just back to last year, what we had to deal with last year. It's nice to be in this position, have this sort of luxury where we're going, I can make a case for him, can make a case for him, can make a case for all of them to get a spot on the roster. So it is quite nice to be in this position, all right? It's kind of a luxury, isn't it? But there you have it. Our wide receivers going into training camp, fighting for a spot on the 53. Let us know who you think will make the cut. Get in touch with us in all the usual ways, which I'll go through in a second. Now, unfortunately, that is all we have time for this week. However, we will be back same time, same place next week as we creep ever closer to the landmark 100th episode of the Big Blue UK and Ireland podcast. Can you believe we're almost at 100 episodes, lads? Bloody hell. And we're going to be back bringing you our look at Kev's favourite position. It's the tight ends. So we look forward to that. Anything else to add before we go, guys?
Just good to be back after a week off. Looking forward to talking about more positions and, honestly, getting onto the defense. I'm looking forward to chatting about the upcoming season and what the defense can do. And in case you weren't aware, it was at the start of the show. We have got a trip planned to New York in November. So again, if you're looking at going out to watch the Patriots game, get in touch with us. Just let us know, and we'll sort out meeting up. We're there for, I think us 3 are there for just over a week, so we'll definitely sort out meeting up, having a few beers, and maybe ask you a couple of questions and stick them on the pod or something. I don't know, but yeah, if you're going for the Patriots game, please do get in touch and let us know.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are other meetups planned for this upcoming season. There's some final crossing of T's and dotting of I's of one potential meetup that we are part of on a wider scale. And then obviously we've got our meetup for the Commanders game as well in London at Sports Bar and Grill in Marylebone, I think it is, isn't it? So we'll give more details on that as it creeps closer to that week. It's just nice being back. The week off is obviously always nice, but you can't beat just getting around a table, getting around a virtual table with some mates and just having a little chat.
Exactly. Yeah, it's been 3 weeks since I've been on there, lads. So it's absolutely it's great to be back. Back to the usual Wednesday night slot. Like you said, getting around that sort of virtual table, talking all things Giants with your mates. Can't get enough of it. So enjoyed this evening and look forward to next week and look forward to the planned events that we're going to have coming up in this sort of second half of this year. 2023 is going to be a busy year for us here on the podcast, but make sure you sort of stay tuned and stick with us because it's going to be a good one. It's going to be a good year. Remember to subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit that little bell to get the latest updates and notifications. Give us a follow on Twitter or Facebook if you don't already, and also Instagram. Just search for Big Blue UK and Ireland. We're all part of the New York Giants Fans UK Facebook page also, so give them guys a follow and you can get in touch with us there. And also via email, bigblueukirl@gmail.com. And we are also part of the Full 10 Yards Network. Check out the site full10yards.co.uk/Giants. My thanks, as ever, go to you, Shane, to Craig and Kev, who's obviously gone already, for joining me, and to you, the viewers and listeners, for tuning in. Much love for the viewers tonight. Thanks very much. We are signing off until next time.